All right. Shalom, everyone. This message is a very special message to me. When I first became a believer, the very first week, I had where I knew I was called of God to study the temple. I don't need to go into that story now, but I mean, it was for me, it was a very clear, this is what I was supposed to do. And so my whole life has been given to this study. And over the years, I've had many doors have been opened to me. I've got to know a number of the key archaeologists. I'm not an archaeologist. Understand that. I'm not an archaeologist. But I use the materials of the best archaeologists. Okay, the experts in the field. I've also had the privilege and the opportunity to work and to be friends with, to spend hours in discussion with key rabbis and rabbinical scholars studying the temple with the heart and the purpose to rebuild it. I spent countless hours on top of the Temple Mount. I've been privileged to be able to go beneath the Temple Mount to see some of the structures that most people are not able to go to see firsthand. So God's opened up many doors over the years, and I thank Him and I praise Him for those opportunities. Several years ago, a book came out. I believe I have it here, but I'm not sure. I don't see it. A book came out around the year 2000. And it was by Dr. Ernest Martin. And it was called The Temples that Jerusalem Forgot. And basically, the book put forth the premise that the Temple Mount, what we call the Temple Mount, the 35-acre area that worldwide is known as the Temple Mount, is in effect a mistake. That rather than being the location of the Holy Temple, it was actually the location of the Fortress Antonia. And that the actual temple was located in the city of David. That, number one, some of the proofs that he brought forth, one of his big ones is that Yeshua stated that no stone would stand upon another stone. And that everybody that goes to Jerusalem goes to the western wall, to the Kotel, and you have stone upon stone. Therefore, this could not be the temple. Number two, he will come in and say that the water for Jerusalem is the Gihon spring. And that they have to have the temple there because that's the location of the water. There will be other items that he will say. But I got the book. I'll get the book literally. If anything has temple on it, I'm going to probably buy it. And so I got the book and I read about 30 pages into it and put it down and felt he's so far off base in the first 30 pages, I don't want to waste my time reading the rest of it. Since that time, I have gone back because a second book came out. The second book is by Robert Kornuke. And in this book, it's going to take the claims of Martin, it's going to reiterate them, and I won't say that there is further scholarship. He's going to use the same quotes from Josephus that Martin had used. let me go back to talking about more before we go ahead, is really the only source that they use is Josephus. They do not use any of the Jewish writings, the Mishnah, the Tosafta, the Talmud Bavli, or the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud or the Babylonian Talmud. They do not use other sources for this, and in particular, they don't use archaeological evidence. The book is presented as an archaeological piece, but they don't use archaeological evidence. So we're going to go into this and we're going to look, can this theory actually hold up? Now I want to show you, this is a video. The video came out in June of last year, 2017. I got a text from one of the ladies in our group, and she said, have you seen this video? It was titled, Urgent, 2017, Rebuilding the Third Temple is Beginning. Now this is going to be from a team of people that are surrounding Bob Cornuke, or Robert Cornuke. And they're going to be presenting all of this. And they're going to have a lot of, did you know? And did you know? And did you know? Now, I looked at this video. I watched the whole thing. I'm going to say it was about 40 minutes long. I watched it in the first couple weeks of July. It came out June 17th. So first couple weeks of July, they had over 800,000 views. I get on the phone, and I made a decision at that point. It's time to start talking about it. It's time to address it. It's becoming a plague. If this isn't true, we need to bring the evidence out. We need to confront it. So anyway, I set up to go to West Texas, and I spoke in Midland. I went from Midland to Carlsbad and spoke there. I went from Carlsbad, New Mexico, up to Albuquerque and spoke there. When we were in Albuquerque, this is the first week of August, when we were in Albuquerque, the number was already up to over 1 million views. You see what was happening. All over, I was having people I would see on the internet. I stopped looking at Facebook. I couldn't take it. Because people were saying, oh, don't you know that the temple is down at the city of David? And this solves all the problems. Let me tell you, the Muslims are overjoyed. They're overjoyed. We have a problem, though. So let's start to talk about Jerusalem. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we have here are basically the three mountains. So we have on the east, and it's outside the old city, the Mount of Olives. You can see it's much, much higher. And then here we have the Kidron Valley. Here is Mount Moriah. Now Mount Moriah, the city of David, is going to sit on Mount Moriah. It is on the lower part of Mount Moriah. Then we have what's called the Temple Mount, where I say the temple is, where Bob Cornuke says that's where the Fortress Antonia was. All right, so then we have the Tyropian Valley right on the other side of the temple, and it's been filled in. It was filled in by the Muslims. Okay, so then we have what is called today Mount Zion. Now, in reality, Mount Moriah was originally called Mount Zion. Okay? We're going to talk about that as we go along. So here, we're looking at the city as it was at the time that the Romans come. The time that the Romans destroy the city. This is from the Holy Land Hotel model that's at the Israel Museum. And we see the Temple Mount here on the eastern side. We would have the Kidron Valley here running beside it. And Yes, bottom of the screen. Let me move right over here. Here is the Temple Mount. Okay, so we have the Temple Mount, and this is 35 acres. This is 35 acres. And this right coming along here, this is the Kidron Valley at the bottom of the screen. So this area right here, now I want you to see how skinny this is. You see there's a wall here? This is the city of David. Okay, so right where we see a number 41, this is what we call the southern steps, meaning the southern steps to the temple. This area right here just below, actually where your 4-1 is going to be what we call the Ophel. It's the hump. We're coming up a mountain, so it's going to be going up. All right? So we're going to come up, and then it's going to have a little hump because we're coming up a ridge. And this, they're going to say that the temple is going to be here in the northern part of the city of David and up into the Ophel. That's where they're claiming it is. Okay, so this area is 14 acres. 14 acres. This area is 35 acres. Now here, also important in this, is we have the location of the Fortress Antonia. Very important. The builder of this model, several scholars, some of these scholars, I would study their material in a moment's time. Okay, Dan Bahat, I know him personally. He's been up on the Temple Mount with one of my tour groups. And Dan Bahat, I would encourage you to read anything he writes. He is an archaeologist that excavated the Western Wall Tunnel, and he is good. Okay, but he says that the Antonia was only this area right here. We have Lee Rittmeyer. Lee Rittmeyer, Rico was using some of Lee Rittmeyer's illustrations. I'm going to use some of his illustrations. Study his material. He is a temple scholar, and his material is good. However, he's going to say that the Antonia is only this area right here. Okay? Now, one of the claims of Bob Cornuke and Ernest Morton is that the Antonia, if it's only this big, it cannot fit the descriptions of Josephus and is not big enough to house the garrison that was at the fortress. Other scholars, like Conrad Schick from the Palestine Exploration Fund, he was in the 1800s, but he was up on the mount and was able to go down into the cisterns. He went into the tunnels. And he has that the Antonia was up here, but it came all the way down into the temple, what we call the Temple Mount, making a much larger fortress that would meet the claims of Josephus. In addition, we have Professor Ehud Netzer. Now, Professor Ehud Netzer, when we talk about King Herod, he was the leading authority on King Herod. His life work was to find Herod's tomb. And he looked for it for years and years and years at the fortress called Herodian. This is where that Herod was buried. Josephus gives a description of his burial at Herodian. But I'm not sure how many years that he searched there at Herodian for, 20 years or so. Every season they were looking. Whole team of archaeologists. Finally, he discovers it. So such big news, it made the front cover of National Geographic. Now, he is the leading authority. He's passed away now. He's the leading authority on Herodian structures. Get his book, by the way. He claims that this is the Antonia and it comes down into the Temple Mount. So what I want to say to you is we have scholars on both sides respected, but we're going to follow it out. So this is their hypothesis. Bob Cornuke, Ernest Martin. The temple is not on the Temple Mount, but rather located a third of a mile down the hill. That's important. Remember that. Down the hill. On the Ophel and northern part of the city of David, that the Temple Mount was in reality the fortress Antonia, which was a Roman fortress requiring the 35 acres of the Temple Mount in order to house the standard garrison of a Roman legion and its auxiliaries, suppliers, and others associated with the fortress. These writers claim there would have been 10,000 individuals housed within its walls. Let me ask you something. What is the size of a Roman legion? Man-wise? 6,000. 6,000. You have 10 cohorts of 600 men in each cohort. Now, the Greek word that is used by Josephus is usually translated as a cohort, not as a legion. But they say it's been translated wrong. We have no problem. I have no problem with the Antonia holding a full legion because they would bring in a legion when the festivals were in order, when the festivals were coming up, like Passover or Shavuot or Sukkot, because during the first century, there was organized resistance against the Romans. The temple was an area that they would expect problems to occur. So they beefed up their security. We do the same thing. So I have no problem with the numbers for a legion. Do have a problem with, how many of you have been to Masada? A lot of people in this room. So at Masada, we have on one side, we have a big legionnaire camp. And on the side where you drive up, you take the sky lift, there's another legionnaire camp. Around the base, there are auxiliary camps. And you can tell the difference between a legionnaire camp and an auxiliary camp. Why do we have separate camps for the Roman legions and different camps for the auxiliaries? The Romans didn't trust anybody. They didn't want to have an armed army inside their own fortress. So auxiliary forces were never quartered in Roman fortresses. Not anywhere. Not in Jerusalem. Suppliers for the fortress were not quartered inside the fortress. Suppliers were always, they purchased their supplies from the outside and brought them in. How many of you have ever seen the older movie, Spartacus? Okay? Spartacus, slave revolt. You know, in Spartacus, they defeated, it's a slave army, and they defeated several Roman armies. They were quite successful. They scared the pants off the Romans. From that point, slaves were never allowed around military installations because they didn't trust them. They didn't want them to learn the art of warfare. So, we have in Bob Cornuke and Ernest Martin, they're going to say the Roman legion, the auxiliaries, the suppliers, and they'll make a point of the slaves. They haven't studied the Roman system very well. Now, here, the location of their temple, here in this illustration, they're claiming that the Temple Mount up here at the top is not the Temple Mount, but rather in this area, you see inside this circle, the northern part of the city of David, and the Ophel. And here we have the balance of the city of David. Now, the city of David we call Ir David. It was originally a Jebusite city, right? And it had a wall around it. That's not something that we think, we know. Because it talks about the difficulty, the strength of this wall. And Joab is able to get inside, and he lets the gates open, and David takes the city. All right, so we're going to go forward and look at several more illustrations. Here, I want you to see, here's the depth of the Kidron Valley. It's steep. The Taropian Valley today is filled in, but it was steep in its time. Notice that it kind of looks like the Florida Panhandle, doesn't it? I just noticed that. Here we are in Florida, okay?
The peninsula, not the panhandle.
Yes, the peninsula. Well, it looks like the peninsula, but I kind of turned sideways and was seeing it as the panhandle. Okay, so what do you have? It's narrow. It's narrow. By the way, this is the Treasures of the Temple Conference in Orlando, Florida, and we've had some tremendous teachings that are going on here. But we want to look. We're going to have this area right in here is what we're talking about, where they're claiming the temple was built. Now this, I want to show you the magazine this comes from, the article. This comes from an article from Biblical Archaeology Review. I encourage you to subscribe to that magazine and to join their digital archive. It costs like $30 a year. I mean, it's great. So this is going to be from an article. I'm going to send this around. This is from Eilat Mazar. Eilat Mazar, anything this lady writes, buy it. Buy it, read it. She is a tremendous archaeologist, scholar, and writer. So, and you'll love, Debbie, will you get this? And the title of the article is from, first off, February 1997. And it's called Excavate King David's Palace with a question mark. What Eilat Mazar did was she took the biblical account. And it says that after David conquered the city, that he builds a palace for himself. And it's going to give you information about it. He couldn't build down in this area because all the land was taken. I mean, it was a very small area. We're talking maybe 8 acres total. And so they have house built on top of house. So she reads the text and she says, okay, based on the text, it should be right here. Right here. And she presents all of this information from the Bible, from the Tanakh, as why his palace should be right here. And kind of like, in the cartoons, X marks the spot. All right? So, this article comes out in Bar Magazine. People are reading it. And there's institutions, there's organizations, there's people, the billionaires that Rico mentioned earlier, that are out there, doing what. Some of these people with real money said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could, and we financed it, we support this college, and the college could get the credit for it. They raised the money, and they purchased this area just north of the Jebusite city. So, here is another article from February 2006. And it's called, Did I Find King David's Palace? By Eilat Mazar. In her first article that where she presented her theory, this map, we see the 35-acre temple map. We see our area called the Southern Steps and the Ophel. And so we come down into this area. This is the city of David. And so this area was excavated in the early 1960s, before the Six-Day War, by a British archaeologist named Kathleen Kenyon. And so we have here is Kenyon's excavation area. Now, Kathleen Kenyon discovered what is called the stepstone structure. I'm going to show you pictures of it, but that stepstone structure is going to be right here. And while they knew it was important, they weren't sure what it was. They knew that it was from the period of David, but they weren't sure how it fit in. So here, all of this is going to be various points of where Kathleen Kenyon was working. This right here is the Gihon Spring. Now, the Gihon Spring, you realize we're on top of a ridge, right? And so we go down, it's going to be just down at the bottom of the hill. So here's the Gihon Spring. This is the Toropian Valley. And I think maybe this is the Hino Valley. I'm not sure what that picture is right there. Okay, so let's go for it. So this is Ernest Martin's from his book, and we see that they have what we call the Temple Mount as a Roman fortress. Okay, so here is the southern steps and the Ophel. Now, I want you to notice the size, by contrast, of here, they're saying the Fortress Antonia, and here they're saying this is the temple. I have a question for you. Which is going to require more people? Okay, I mean, are we talking a lot more people? Yes. Hold on to your socks, okay? You're not going to believe the numbers of people that are recorded being at the temple. Now, they're concerned about the comfort and how much room it takes for 10,000 Roman soldiers. But let's start thinking in not hundreds of thousands, but rather in millions attended the temple during the festivals. All right. Now, we're going to read, we've already gone through that the Temple Mount was in reality the Fortress Antonia. Let's find out a little bit about the Antonia. They're going to claim that the Temple Mount is a classic Roman fortress. Okay? Why is that important? What does that mean? That means that it was built as a Roman fortress. It was built by Roman engineers, Roman architects. It was built as a Roman fortress. Therefore, it should conform to standard Roman methods, right? So, this is from Josephus. I have a question first. Which is more dangerous? A blatant lie or a half-truth? Yes. Half-truth is what these books are going to be a collection of half-truths. And it sounds close enough that people that haven't really looked into it can easily buy it. All right. Now, Aristobulus, by degrees and unwillingly, gave credit to these accusations that Aristobulus is going to be a Hasmonean. You remember the Hasmoneans, they're from Judah Maccabee, and they're going to be all the way up until the time of Herod. So they're having a civil war between Hasmonean leaders. Now, Aristobulus, by degrees and unwillingly, gave credit to these accusations, and accordingly, he took care not to show his suspicion openly, though he provided to be secure against any incidents. So he placed the guards of his body in a certain dark subterranean passage, for he lay sick in a place called formerly the Citadel. It is the word Boris, B-A-R-I-S. It's the Greek form of the Hebrew word birah, which means fortress or palace. Though afterward its name was changed to Antonia. Oh, wait. It was formerly called the Boris before the time of Herod. Okay? In other words, the fortress was already there. And the Romans aren't on the scene. But the fortress was already there. Okay, so that his name was changed to Antonius, and he gave orders that if Antigonus came unarmed, they should let him alone, but if he came to him in his armor, they should kill him. He also sent some to let him know beforehand that he should come unarmed. That's from the Jewish Wars by Josephus, Book 1, paragraph 75. Now, the fortresses. We have the Antonia is originally was a Greek not a Greek fortress. It was a Hasmonean fortress that was called the Baris. Herod is going to enlarge it and rename it the Antonia. Okay? Masada. Masada was originally a Hasmonean fortress. It was built by Alexander Yanai. Herod comes in and he enlarges it and he renames it, or he makes it a Herodian fortress. But it's originally going to be Hasmonean, meaning that this is a Jewish fortress from start to beginning, from start to end. Macarius, this is in Jordan. Macarius is where Yochanan Hamatzvil, John the Immerser, has his head cut off. It's built by Yochanan Hyrcanus and Alexander Yanai, Hasmonean kings. Taken over by Herod, enlarged, and called the Macarius. Okay? Jewish fortress. This is built by Herod. It's built by Herod, and it's where Herod was buried, Herodian. And it's a Jewish fortress. It's not a Roman fortress, it's a Jewish fortress. So when we go through the land, there are no Roman fortresses in the land of Israel until after the destruction of the temple. They're all Jewish fortresses. So you've been told a half-truth that it's a classic Roman fortress. Okay, so this is another quote from Josephus. And besides this, upon Hyrcanus' complaint to his mother, Hyrcanus is going to be a Hasmonean. She had compassion for his case and put Aristobulus' wife and sons under restraint in Antonia, which was a fortress that joined to the northern part of the temple. That means this drawing's wrong. If this is the Antonia, then this drawing's wrong. Okay? So let's go back here. All right, which was a fortress that joined to the northern part of the temple. It was, as I've already said of old, called the Baris. But later had the name of Antonia when Anthony was Lord of the East, just as the other cities, Sebastus and Agrippus, had their names changed, and these given them from Sebastus and Agrippa. So, the numbers. Legion 6,000, cohort 400 to 600, and then we had the auxiliaries and the suppliers of materials. Rico? There we go. I got it. Yes.
Just one quick question about Aristobulus' wife, the prior slide. What time period would that have been?
Okay, the question is, what about Aristobulus' wife that is referring? What is the time period for this? In the previous slide, this is where we have a power struggle between two brothers, Hyrcanus and Aristobulus, and they're having a civil war. Herod is on the side of Hyrcanus. His father has been hired by Hyrcanus' mother. She knows that his brother will try to take everything from him, and he's very strong, ruthless, and so forth. So she hires a Jewish convert, an Idumean, meaning he was from what we would call in the Tanakh an Edomite. And so he hires Antipater, Antipater's son is Herod. Okay? So that kind of gives you a time frame. They're having a civil war, and that's what it's talking about. So at the time of the Civil War, it was actually called the Boris. It's going to be after Herod rises up. He's going to enlarge the Boris and rename it to Antonia. He doesn't move the Boris. He's going to build over the old, but he's going to expand its size. All right. So these high priests, upon the coming of that feast, which is called the Passover, y'all are going to love this. When they slay their sacrifices from the 9th hour to the 11th, so that accompanying not less than 10, you have to have 10 individuals that are Jews inside of the city of Jerusalem in order to have Passover lamb. That's the minimum number. Belong to every sacrifice, for it is not lawful for them to feast singly by themselves. And many of us are 20 in a company. 20 is the maximum number you can have. Found the number of sacrifices was 256,500, which, upon the allowance of no more than 10, that feast together amounts to 2,700,200 persons that were pure and holy. That's how many people would have been going to the temple for that Passover. So we're 10,000, 14,000. Let's be generous and say 20,000 against 2 million. Who has a bigger need of space? All right? What's that? JWR, Jewish Wars. Jewish Wars by Josephus. Okay? And this is book 6, paragraph 423 to 428. And you have these in your workbook. You should go and read them for yourselves. Read the context. Read before them. Read after them. Okay? Put it to the test. Don't take anything that we are saying here just because we said it. Try to disprove it. Try to make it. If it's valid, it'll stand. If it's not valid, it should fall. Okay? So, we have the limited view, meaning that this, as we see at the Holy Land Hotel model, that the Antonia was this smaller fortress area. Dan Bahat, good scholar. I disagree with him. Lean Rittmeyer, Michael Aviona, he's the one that built this model, are the scholars that support that view. Here, this is a drawing from Ehud Netzer, out of his book on the architecture of King Herod. You see how it penetrates down into the Temple Mount. We have Ehud Netzer, Conrad Schick. There is a model in the Western Wall Tunnel, and it shows the Antonia coming down to just north of the Muslim platform. Huge structure. So, and in fact, it will be, the Antonia is going to be all the way up here. Rico, can y'all see this dot up there in the video? Yeah. That is the Struthian Pool. Struthian Pool, we know exactly where it was, or where it is. It's still there. It's still there, and it sits catty corner at the northwestern edge of the Antonia. So we know this is up here is the Antonia. However, you see these cisterns here? Remember, the water is going to tell you where the buildings were. Anytime you have a well, anytime you have a cistern, there is a function for that well. So if you can discover that function, then you'll know what was there. So these are the cisterns for the Boris.
Joe,
yes?
where they're at on the map, north, east, west.
This is going to be the west. At the top is going to be the north. Over here to the right is going to be the east. Down below, bottom, is going to be the south. All right? So here, See these three cisterns right there? And you see this dotted line coming here. This dotted line was the moat. That was the the fosse. It was built, we don't know when it was built. We actually think it was there in the first temple period. The reason was that this is a high ridge, high ground. And so any enemy coming from that direction would be actually attacking downhill towards the temple. So therefore you put a fort here to keep them from doing it. You build up that, you make that your strong point. And you put a moat, a dry moat in between. Now that moat was mentioned in the book of the Maccabees. That moat was mentioned by Josephus. Josephus records that the Roman general Pompey, you know who Pompey was? He was a sidekick of Julius Caesar. And in fact, they had a civil war and Pompey got killed. But Pompey comes in order to quell the revolt between the two Hasmonean brothers. And he's on the side of Hyrcanus. And so Aristobulus has taken refuge inside the fortress of the temple. This is a fortress. It is stronger than Antonia. It is the strongest location in Jerusalem. So Pompey fills in the moat. In 1868, Charles Warren from the Palestine Exploration Fund, he located and measured the moat. Okay, you can see the moat. I'll show it to you later, and how you can tell it when you're on the Temple Mount. Okay, so we have the bars. These cisterns right here. See this one? Can you tell that one's kind of kidney shaped? Look, see this one over here is kidney shaped. See that? That dates the cistern. It tells you when it was built. It was built in the Hasmonean period. All right? So that predates Herod. So all of this, we believe that the Antonia came all the way like this and down as far as the moat. Big fortress. Easily to house 10,000 people. Easy to meet the descriptions that Josephus describes. All right? So, here is where the moat is. Right here. See that sidewalk? It goes right over the moat. And so, the cistern, there's a water fountain right here. And it sits over one of those old cisterns. They're still drinking water from the cistern. I wouldn't encourage it. Okay? All right, but all of the, look at this area. Going all the way like this, that would be the Antonia Fortress. Gigantic. Gigantic. So, here this is what we call the Muslim platform, right here. This is the east. This is going to be the Kidron Valley. Over here is the Kotel. You see that plaza, that's coming down to the wall, the western wall. Here's your southern area down here. This is the southern steps and the Ophel.
Joe, can you go back and show them where you will locate the original northern wall of the first temple by the access stone right there?
All right, right here, coming across here.
People on the screen can see it.
Right, basically here, and coming across this way was the original northern wall.
Plenty of room to the north to have
Yes.
the
See, yeah, all of this part here would have been the Antonia, and we have described by Josephus a parade ground. And he does this stunt. He wants to intimidate the Jewish defenders inside the temple. So he takes his legions, and when he comes to fight, he has a number of legions. Okay, he's got a whole army with him. And so he's going to do payday, where they all dress and they put on all of their best finery, and he parades the army, so everybody inside will see what they're fighting. He wants to scare them. But it says that from the temple, they could see this parade ground. They were able to see it. And we believe it was right here. And if all of this is the Temple Mount, and down here you have the city of David, there's no way that they would be able to see, because you're going to be looking uphill from the city of David. It's a third of a mile downhill. And when I say downhill, walk it with me. You are walking like this. You are going up a mountain. Okay? So, we have the walls. Everybody's seen these pictures. Everybody's seen the walls. Excuse me. Excuse me. This is the eastern wall, and these are retaining walls. Now, a lot of people don't know what a retaining wall is. Anybody in here not know what a retaining wall is? Everybody knows what a retaining... Okay, great. A retaining wall is a wall that is built that you have a heavy structure up on top. If you don't have a retaining wall, and especially in terrain like you have in Jerusalem, you have a big rain, everything will slide downhill. Or that just the weight, it will shift. They're going to have earthquakes. So you build a wall that makes that secure. Now, you don't call this part of the structure. This is the substructure. All right? So, the retaining walls around that the Roman general Titus spared the Fortress Antonia from destruction, as it was imperial Roman property, and to garrison the troops following the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. They claim that the remaining retaining walls around the temple prove this. They're going to make a big, big thing out of Yeshua says, not one stone would stand upon another stone. And they're going to come in and say, look at all these Herodian stones here. They're all standing on top of one another. So it proves that this can't be the temple. So we're going to examine this. Now, these are from Lean Rittmeyer. And what we're looking at here is, this is the southwestern corner of the Temple Mount. And you see where it is in gray. You see this? That is stone that was originally standing. That, in other words, it was not pushed down. This is the eastern wall. Now look, at the eastern wall, we have stone that goes, here's these gates I was telling you about the other day that you can see. We actually have windows. This is a tower that was on the southeastern corner. But what you see in green, all of this is still there. Still in the wall as it was built at the time it was built. It wasn't cast down. I have a question. We have a fortress, and let me see if I can. Right here, we've got a little podium. Can you all see this podium? It's behind the podium that I'm speaking from. But let's say that this is a building up here, and we're going to have at the very top. We're going to send some Roman soldiers, and we want them to push the stones off the top. We're going to destroy this. So we're going to knock the stone off, and where's it going to go? Are you sure? Yeah, it's going to go down. It's going to go down, and so they're going to knock the next stone. Where's it going to go? All right. Now, eventually, they're going to get that whole top row of stones are down there. So they're going to start on the second row. Where do they go? They go down, but what's going to be different? They're going to be on top of the first row, right? So if you start way up here, and you're knocking all this stone down, and it's all coming down here, is starting to come up this way, right? There comes a point that you cannot take the wall any lower. Everybody understand? It fills up with debris. It fills up with debris. And so there's only so far that they can take it down. All right. So, back to the hypothesis of Ernest Morton and Robert Cornuke that the temple had to be located just west of the Gihon spring located at the base of the western slope of the city of David, the Ir David, within the Kidron Valley, as this was the only water source for Jerusalem. Okay, so let me ask you, was the Gihon spring the only water source for Jerusalem? No, it was not. It is the primary water source for the city, but not for the temple. All right, so that the southeastern ridge of Mount Moriah is also known as Mount Sion. Sion. I don't like using the word Zion, okay? It's just a slang word that's not nice in Hebrew. So the Hebrew is Sion. It says the southeastern ridge. All right, so at the time of David, Sion is going to be true, the mountain that we call Moriah. Later on, the western mountain got named Sion, but that was actually a mistake. But Sion, you're welcome to look at them. I have here, I'm not going to pass these around right now, but I went through the Tanakh, and I got every reference to Sion, and I printed it out. And so read through them for yourself. You can do it on your computer or whatever. But you're going to find that Sion is going to be a synonymous term for the city of Jerusalem. It's also going to be, in one passage, a term for the land of Israel. Okay, so at the time of King David, where was the city of Jerusalem? Where was it? Well, it was only on that ridge. It was a little bitty town. But the city's going to grow. It's going to go through a population explosion when his son Solomon becomes king. Why? Why is it going to go through a population explosion? What? Construction. He's building the temple. Thousands of workers are now coming to Jerusalem. He's also building a new palace. Solomon will. And we're talking years and years of employment. And a lot more women, okay? They're going to have, wow, it's a business opportunity. You could go into the Holiday Inn, okay? You can have the bakeries. You can have all the various things that are going to come with expansion. So the city is going to greatly expand. So now Sion is going to be city of David, up where the Temple Mount is, and going over to the western hill. We actually have proof, and I hope to show you this. I think I have a picture of it here. We have proof that at the time of Solomon that the city had expanded to the western hill, what we call the Jewish quarter today. All right, so third point, that the size of the Temple Mount, they're going to claim, was 600 feet by 600 feet according to Josephus. So we're going to look at some text. You'll love this. And now Titus gave order to his soldiers that were with him to dig up the foundations of the Tower of Antonia and make him a ready passage for his army to come up. And what we're going to see is that it is impossible for the Temple Mount to be the Fortress Antonia because Titus himself commanded it to be torn down all the way to its foundations. So you can go back and read it. This is going to be in Jewish Wars, Book 6, paragraph 93. Okay, but here's what happened. The defenders, the Jewish defenders inside the temple, are going to dig a tunnel towards the Antonia. Let me back up a little bit more. After Herod dies, the Romans take over the Fortress Antonia. Okay, so they have a small garrison there. They keep a cohort, about 600 men, except when there's a problem that arises. They have some rebellion break out, or it's a time of a festival. Too many people come into town, they bring in more men. Okay, so the revolt starts. The Jews kind of catch the Romans by surprise, and they get inside the fortress and they capture it. So the Jews have the fortress, and they're going to hold the fortress all the way until Titus arrives towards the end of the war. Titus is going to surround everything, and Titus is successful in sending an elite team of guys. They scale the wall, they get inside, and they capture the fortress. So he's got this ace in the hole now. He's got this, the Antonia is now in his hands. And the Antonia, while it's not as strong as the temple, it is a strong fortress. It is a plus for Titus to have it. So the Jews inside the temple are going to dig a tunnel that goes from the temple beneath the Antonia. They fill it up with hay, pitch, all kinds of flammable materials, set it on fire. Okay, with the hope that the Antonia will just collapse. It doesn't. It doesn't. It didn't work totally. However, it was no longer safe as a structure. So Titus commands his soldiers to tear it down. And they're going to use it. They're going to use it so as like a highway for their legions to be able to attack in order, which is their preferred way to attack. They are able to put a lot of men, a lot of equipment at a certain point and attack in force. Okay, so they're going to leave one tower of the Antonia. The Antonia has 4 towers. The one on the northeastern corner. I'll show you where we're talking about in a few moments. This one is the tallest of the 4 towers of the Antonia. It's going to be 70 cubits high. Titus wants to lead the attack. He's that kind of guy. He likes to lead the attack. They won't let him. His men refuse. They say, you're too valuable. He's the emperor's son, by the way. You're too valuable. We won't let you go. So they strike a bargain with him that he can go and stand in this one remaining tower of the Antonia. And he's supposed to watch. And by standing there, he will be able to identify the soldiers that turn and run so they can execute them. He'll also be able to identify the soldiers that excel in bravery so he can reward them. Now this means that he's close enough to identify them. If you put the Fortress Antonia where the Temple Mount is and then you move it downhill to the Ophel, he would have to be Superman to be able to tell who is who. Do you understand? It doesn't work. So we have, in the meantime, by the way, again, I want you to read this in context for yourself. I'm taking a little excerpt. They took excerpts out. They just didn't tell you the whole story. You go back and look at it in detail, and it will tell you the story. It'll tell you it can't be. Antonia cannot be at the Temple Mount. Okay, so in the meantime, the rest of the Roman army had in 7 days' time overthrown, and they put in the word some foundations of the tower Antonia and had made a ready and broad way to the temple. And so all that's left is that one tower. Then did the legions come near the first court and began to raise their banks. The one bank was opposite the northwest corner of the inner temple. That makes sense. If you come across from the Antonia, across the fosse, where you at? Northwestern corner. Another was at that northern edifice, which was between the 2 gates. Meaning the 2 gates that we have between the 2 towers on the northern side. That's the Beit HaMoked and the Beit HaNitzotz. In the meantime, the rest of the, let's see, all right. For the Jews, this is another quote from Jewish Wars, Book 6, paragraph 311. for the Jews, by demolishing the Tower of Antonia, had made their temple square, while at the same time they had it written in their sacred oracles that then should their city be taken, as well as their holy house, when once their temple should become square. So you've seen several references that the Antonia was torn down. All right. Now, this is one that I hope that you'll love. Not one stone will stand upon another, that the temple was cast down to its foundations, not only for the temple, but also for the entire city of Jerusalem. That not one stone stood upon another, but that all were cast down. And that's from Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 and 2. And we're going to look at quotes from Josephus. Let's read Matthew 24, first two verses. Then Yeshua went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples. I like the word talmidim. A talmid is a student. Okay, it's a stronger word than disciple. Came up to show him the buildings of the temple. Well, the buildings they're all gone. They're all gone. I can take you up there and I can show you some stones from the temple period, but every single building is disappeared. All right, so, and Yeshua said to them, do you not see all these things? Surely I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. I want you to look at this verse. We'll look at Luke 19. Okay, Luke 19, verse 41 through 44. So now as he drew near, meaning Yeshua, he's coming from the Mount of Olives, he saw the city and wept over it, saying, if you had known, even you, especially in this your day, the things that make for your peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surround you, and close you in on every side. And level you, and level you, and level you, and children within you to the ground, and they will not leave in you, in Jerusalem, one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation. All right? I know that in this room there are many people that have been to Jerusalem. And there are whole walls of houses standing all over the city from the time of the destruction by the Romans. Go to the Herodian mansions in the Jewish quarter. Go to the Xistos down in the Western Wall tunnel, where you'll have walls standing over your head. So we have from Josephus, he's going to give several speeches by Titus. But for all the rest of the walls surrounding Jerusalem, it was so thoroughly laid even with the ground by those that dug it up to the foundation, that there was nothing to make those that came thither believe that Jerusalem had ever been inhabited. This was the end which Jerusalem came to by the madness of those that were for innovations, a city otherwise of great magnificence and a mighty fame among all mankind. And they're going to make quite a deal of this throughout the book. They're going to give several quotes, and these quotes are there in Josephus. Okay? However, I can take you to the third wall. If you go to Jerusalem, you don't go with me or go with Rico or Dina, then ask your guide, where's the third wall? Get them to take you by there. Now you can go, you're going to have to, if you want to sit on the wall, you're going to have to get somebody to help you, lift you up, because there's stone after stone. Or you could go to the second wall. Oh, it's right behind, it's in the Jewish quarter. It's called the Broad Wall, and it's still standing. And so you can go all over the ancient city of Jerusalem from the first century, and you're going to find ruins. So I have a question. Was Titus lying when he made these boasts, when he made these claims? Was Yeshua mistaken? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we're mistaken in how we understand it. All right? This is in what's called the Herodian mansions. Now, look at this wall here. That wall is higher than my head. Look at this. Look at these. We have stones standing up on stone. I can tell that people lived here. Titus said you couldn't tell it was ever inhabited. I'm inside a building called the Zistos. Look at the stones above my head. That's me. I'm 5'9". It goes up 15 foot. This is the building I'm standing in. See it right here? Look how high. This is Herodian stone. That high. Was Yeshua mistaken when he said this? No. I want to show you the practice of the first century. This is out of the Mishnah. And so it's going to say, from Jericho, they could hear the sound of the great gate. That's the gate. That's opening the temple doors. As it was open, 15 miles. From Jericho, they could hear the sound of the magrapha, which is possibly a bagpipes or a water organ, or both. That was used in the temple. From Jericho, they could hear the sound of the wood that Big Katim made as a mukni, a machine. This is what Rico was talking about. This is the machine that pumps the water for the kior, for the basin. From Jericho, they could hear the sound of Gavini the crier. Okay? He gives a threefold cry in the temple. That means he has a loud voice. If you can hear it 15 miles away. The next one you're going to love. From Jericho, they could hear the sound of the pipe. That means the flute. You ever heard a flute that loud? From Jericho, they could hear the sound of the cymbal. These are the choir director who has finger cymbals. These are not meant to be taken literally. It is the way that in the ancient world that they would say it was very important. It was very significant. When a ruler comes in, he says, you can't tell the town was there. The people knew, don't take it literally. It is a way of describing total destruction. Let me give you an example for Yeshua. People want to take everything Yeshua said literally. It says, Yeshua says that it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the gates of the kingdom of heaven. Did he mean it literally? What he was saying is it's difficult. Your riches will get in your way. But it wasn't meant to be taken literally. So what I'm saying to you is Yeshua, in saying about the Temple Mount, that's covered because the buildings are gone. But when he talked about Jerusalem, it wasn't to be literal. It is an expression. We use expressions. When somebody says something stupid to us, we say, go fly a kite. Do we really mean it? No. Not at all. But everybody understands what we're saying. And so you have to read it as it would be done in that period, that time. All right. Oh, look at this one. You'll love this one. It says that from Jericho they could smell the aroma of the incense spices. Rabbi Eliezer ben Digley says, my father's house had goats on Mount Mikvar. That's Macarius. That's in Jordan. That's like 40 miles from the temple. And they would sneeze from the aroma of the incense spices. That's kind of like, you give me your best shot, I'm going to come back with one. All right. That the temple uses the water from the Gihon springs. So this pool, by the way, up here, this is called the Birkat Israel, or the Pool of Israel. It wasn't there at the time of the temple. It was built after its destruction. Here's the Struthian pool for the Antonia. Here's our fosse. Here are the cisterns for the Boris. By the way, here's a conduit that brought water from the north, not the Gihon Springs down here to the south. And it brought water to the Boris.
There's other water sources for Jerusalem. Here we have the cisterns at the northeastern corner, the Temple Mount. This is number 27, which was a mikvah. Very important. Why are mikvahs so important to find on the Temple Mount? Yeah, well, what is the mikvah's the chamber that you immerse in? What's it made from? What? Stone. Yeah, but they don't make it like they build stone walls. They dig it out of stone. And you can't move it. It's not like the cartoons where you can move over the cave or something, just drag it. Okay? Once it's there, it's there. And if the experts can come in and identify that as a mikvah, then you're going to have in the various writings, it'll tell you where the mikvahot are. Okay? And so that is like this great treasure for a researcher to find where is a mikvah located. So here we have the tunnel system, number 28, where they operated the water from. We have the massive cisterns down here to the south. So we had that the temple had to be located just west of the Gihon Spring, located at the base of the western slope of the city of David, or Ir David, within the Kidron Valley, as this was the only water source for Jerusalem. Okay. By the way, I have an article here I'll show you later if you like. A friend of mine that helped me with our research on the water was at the time, she's retired now, but she was the leading expert in Jerusalem on the ancient water supply of the city. And her name is Ronit Amiel. And she's retired now, not because she's old. She's probably still in her 30s. Yeah, she's younger than some of our kids. But she's Orthodox, and she got married, and she has 4 or 5 kids of her own now. And so but she helped me with the research on this, and she wrote some major papers that are published in some of these journals on the ancient water supply. Now, my point here is the authorities that work in the ancient water supply will agree that the water for the Temple Mount did not come from the Gihon Spring. Okay? All right. I want to show you a book. I sent the article around that about King David's palace. You know, is it possible that King David's palace was here? And did I send that second article around? All right, the second one around. Okay, so they raised the money for Eilat Mazor to dig at the place that she felt had to be David's palace. So they start digging, and what did they discover? They discover a huge palace. Now, I say it's a palace based upon the architecture within the palace. Columns, the quality of the materials within. And so her second article was called, Did I Find King David's Palace? And I'm going to pass around another book. This you could buy at the city of David. You can buy it all over Jerusalem, but it's called The Palace of King David by Eilat Mazor. So Debbie, will you please get this and pass it around? Excavations at the summit of the city of David, preliminary report of seasons 205 to 207, 2005 to 2007. All right. Now, this is a stepstone structure. Remember, Kathleen Kenyon had discovered part of it? And they didn't know what it led to. So they have another, in the 1970s, they have another dig in the Kidron Valley. This is done by Professor Igal Shilo. And he uncovers the entire stepstone structure. when Elat Mazar comes along and she finds David's palace, they realize there was a problem, that in order to build such a big palace, there wasn't enough room at the ridge at the top of the city of David. It's a skinny area. So they increased the ground and built a support for the weight of the palace by building a retaining wall called the stepstone structure. Now this is from Igashilo's dig in 1975, I believe. But here we're going to look at David's palace. Exactly. I mean, wouldn't that be exciting if you could say, okay, it's going to be right here, and they dig down and just like you said. All right, I want to show you how big this is. Can you see, I don't know if you can see, there is a person standing right here. Right there. Can you see that? Now there's a person crouching down inside here. Can you see that? They only covered a part of the palace. They weren't able, there were houses built that they weren't able to dig out the whole palace. But this thing is massive. Look, oh, can you see this? See that person? Absolutely gigantic. Now, let's go back. This is from her second article. And right here, this is where she discovered the palace. See that? That's right. By the way, that's exactly where these guys are claiming the temple was. Now we have a problem. Because David is in his palace. Let's picture this. I love to act this out. David's in his, there he is. He's sent before the Lord in numbering the people. Remember that? And so the prophet comes to him and says, okay, you're going to be punished. Choose which way you want. And he gives him three options. He says, okay, I'm going to place myself in the hands of the Lord. Whatever he does, I'm fine with. So anyway, David is repentant. And we have 70,000 people have died. And it says that he went up from there. And he went up from there. And he purchased the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Well, wait a second. If this is where David's palace is, that they're saying the temple is, what's wrong with that story? It contradicts Scripture. It's basically saying the threshing floor, David, you don't have to go for it. It's in your living room. Okay? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. All right? So now I want you to notice right here. Do you see that area? That is a parking lot. Parking lot. It's called the Gavati parking lot. Here you can see this is from Professor Benjamin Mazar. This is one of his pictures. He is the grandfather of Elat Mazar, and he was the responsible for one of the greatest digs in Israel, the southern steps in the southwestern corner. And this is before they began digging. You see there's no excavation here. And you can see the parking lot back then. It's called the Gavati parking lot. And they used to use the parking lot. Parking around the Temple Mount is murder. I mean, it's for the buses, it is a pain. Everything's one-way traffic, and you can't get a spot. And believe me, people get out and fight for these spots. Well, used to, they would drive into this parking lot, park a lot of buses there, a lot of cars there. The only thing is that the guy that owned the parking lot wasn't getting paid anything for people using his parking lot. And as the years went by, the parking lot began to deteriorate, and it had these huge potholes that you could almost lose a bus in. So he had a choice. Come in, repair the parking lot, and don't get any money, or sell the parking lot to somebody that wants to build like a restaurant, hotel. I mean, it would be a great place, great location. And so anyway, same group of people that found out, that read the article from Elat Mazar, I think I know where David's palace is, that raised the money, bought this area right here. They raised the money to buy the parking lot to match the offer from the businessman that was going to make this man rich. So, they began excavating the Gavati parking lot. So here you can see the parking lot. See it here? All right, here's where David's palace is. They're right across the street from each other. So the Temple Mount is right up here. Let's go back one picture. See, here's the parking lot. Here's the Temple Mount. All right, so here, 2015. Now I'm going to pass this around. This, yeah. Well, can I get you to, well, I can do it. Here. This is from 2015. It is 2015, right? What's the date on that? 2016. They have their conference in the month of Elul, August, every year. And 2015. This is from Wikipedia, so you can look it up yourself. But the proof is going to be in this article. Okay, so in November 2015, the Israel Antiquities Authority announced the probable discovery of the Akra. Okay, so I need to explain what the Akra is. So, the Akra is a fortress that was built by Antiochus Epiphanes. Y'all know who Antiochus Epiphanes is? He's the villain of Hanukkah. And so he came in. He's a ruler from Damascus. He's a Greek. He comes in and he starts putting all these laws. The Jews cannot do this. They have to worship pagan gods. They have to do all this. And so the Maccabean revolt begins. So he takes over the temple. And he's going to desecrate the temple. He builds a fortress to the south of the temple called the Akra. Judah Maccabee, 3 years later, he drives the Greeks out of the temple, and he rededicates the temple. We have Hanukkah. However, he attacks the Akra. He can't drive them out. It's too strong a fortress. His brothers come along. They try to attack the Akra, Jonathan and Yochanan, and they fail. Greeks are still there. It's not until the fourth brother, Shimon Hasmoneh, comes, he succeeds in destroying the Akra. Antiochus has been dead for years. In fact, from Antiochus the fourth, they have now gone through several Greek rulers. They're all the way to Antiochus the seventh. All right. So, the November 2015, the Israel Antiquities Authority announced the probable discovery of the Akra. According to archaeologists Doron Ben-Ami, Yana Tekaanovitz, and Salome Cohen, excavating the Gavati parking lot adjacent to the city of David, they had unearthed a complex of rooms and fortified walls they identified as the Akra. This places it slightly south of previous suggested locations on the Ophel. Finds include fortification walls, a watchtower measuring 4 by 20 meters, and a glacis. Now, do y'all know what a glacis is? You want to hear a neat word in Hebrew? In Hebrew, it's halak laka. I like the way it sounds. Halak laka. Okay? What it means is smooth. Smooth. A glacis is going to be a slope. And let's say that right here. This is going to be a fortress. So what I do is I build this slope coming up to this. Because I don't want anybody to get close enough to pull down the walls of my fortress. Number two, I don't want them to get a ladder up there and come over the top of the fortress, and I certainly don't want them to bring a battering ram close enough to beat my wall down. So, I build a glacis. I have a slope, a sloped wall, and generally what they would do is they would put plaster on top of it. Then when an enemy showed up, they're going to send the guy around with a jug of olive oil. Okay? You understand how that works? All right? So, they discovered the glacis, bronze arrowheads, lead sling stones, and ballista stones. You know what ballista stones are? Ancient cannonballs. Catapult stones. All right? So, ballista stones were unearthed at the site stamped with a trident, which was the emblem of Antiochus IV. They found coins in there. These are indicative of the military nature of the site and the efforts to take it. The excavation also yielded coins from the reigns of Antiochus IV through Antiochus VII. So, as well as a multitude of stamped I can't say it, Rhodian amphora handles. These are for wine. All right? All right, so I'm going to show you the Acra. Here, this is part of the glacis. See it right here? Now, this glacis is pretty fascinating because they found that it was constructed. I don't know if you can see it here, but I'm sending the article around, and there's going to be like whole rows of these white stones, and then you'll have a certain color or dirt, and then you're going to have another row of stones, and there's layers. And so they built this in layers. Now, they were able to do analysis on this, and they were able to tell that it was built in the spring of the year because of the pollens that they found inside here. They were able to determine all kinds of things. One thing they weren't expecting. Oh, by the way, here's the glacis wall. Here's the wall of the Acra. Right here. What they weren't expecting is that Igal Shiloh, when he excavated and showed, here's the stepstone structure. Remember that picture I showed you? He had discovered a glacis to a Hasmonean period wall. And they had, the glacis is gone. When they dug it up, they threw it away. But they took pictures of everything. They saved samples of everything, and they discovered the glacis on the eastern side, uncovered by Professor Shiloh, that it matched the glacis that was discovered in the Gavati parking lot. So they knew that the fortress went from here all the way across the top of the ridge. What's more, that there have been in the early 1920s to a McAllister and a Crowfoot that they had also discovered watchtowers with glacis, and they had taken pictures, they had taken samples, and they matched what was discovered and now identified as the Acra. They had now understood why that the Maccabees couldn't destroy the fortress. It took the whole ridge. I'm going to show you the size of this thing. Give me a second here. I'm going to get to it. All right. I thought I had. Let me go through it real quick. I know we're down to almost out of time. I'm going to finish this up really fast.
Go ahead, try to find it.
All right. Give me a second. All right, I want to come right here. It is going to be 800 meters long. The fortress, it's going downhill. It's going to be 60 meters across, which takes the whole ridge.
So there you looking where? North, south, east?
This is coming down. This is the city of David right here. So it occupied the whole top of the ridge. So they weren't able to get to it to defeat it. And it was genius. It was so big there was no way to get around it. But look, it went all the way up. It's going to cover part of the street that goes around the Temple Mount. All right, we now have an impossibility. The Acra is built about 160 years before the time of Yeshua. It is built at the exact location where, according to Cornuke and to Martin, they're saying the temple was. It's impossible. They are ignoring archaeology, every bit of it. They are ignoring what Josephus says. They are ignoring what the Tanakh says. They are giving you half-truths, little pieces. But every bit of it is a major lie. It is another way to say one of the most horrible lies. It is anti-Semitic. It says the Jews are wrong again. We know better. We've been studying 6 months. Okay? Doesn't work. Big news. All right. If we go through, I'm going to just briefly tell you about these. You'll see this is a Jewish War, Book 5, paragraph 145. It says that following the destruction of the temple, that they're going to destroy the Akra. Now, we're not talking about the fortress. The Akra has been destroyed 100 years before by Shimon Hasmoneh. But they call the neighborhood where it was located the Akra. All right, so if we go the other way westward, it began at the same place and extended through a place called Beit Zol to the gate of the Essenes, and after that it went southward, having its bending above the fountain Siloam, where, where it also bends again toward the east at Solomon's Pool and reaches as far as a certain place which they call Ophlis. Ophlis is the Ophel, where it was joined to the eastern cloister of the temple. Okay, that's Jewish Wars 5. Now look at this one. This is Titus speaking to the people. He says, "Are not your people dead? Is not your holy house gone?" So stop right there. Is he saying the temple's destroyed? Yes. Is not your holy house gone? Is not your city in my power? Now, what's happened is the upper city's fallen, the temple has fallen, the last holdouts are down in the city of David. And so he's begging with them, lay down your arms, quit it. So they're going to come back. They're going to say, he's going to give them this offer. Surrender and put yourself in my hands. They ask to be allowed to leave. It makes him mad. He says, you have no right. You have provoked this war. You have no right to ask to leave. Okay? Where it says, however, I'll not imitate your manners. If you throw down your armor, deliver up your bodies to me, I grant you your lives. You'll live. I will act like a mild master of a family. Okay? He goes on. So to that offer of Titus, they made this reply that they could not accept it. So they're going to ask to leave. At this, paragraph 352, Titus had great indignation that when they were in the case of men already taken captives, they should pretend to make their own terms with him as if they had been conquerors. So this is what he's going to order. That they, it says that he would henceforth spare no one, but fight them with his whole army. And so he gave orders to the soldiers both to burn and to plunder the city, who did nothing indeed that day, but on the next day they set fire to the repository of the archives to Akra. They're destroying the Akra neighborhood. After Titus has just said the temple's gone. So you can't have where the Akra is the location of the temple if he's going to attack the temple, the Akra after it's destroyed, after the temple is destroyed. Okay?
I want to get that one. That's so important. Okay.
All right. You can't. Titus said, "Hey, your temple's gone." He pleads with the people, surrender. I promise you your lives. They come back and say, no, let us go. Let us go. It makes him mad. And so he gives orders to his men to burn the city, and it says they did nothing that day, but on the next day they set fire to the repository, to the armory of the archives. They are going to attack the Akra, all right, to the council house, and they're also going to attack the Ophel. That's where these guys are saying the temple is. They didn't read Josephus. At which time the fire proceeded as far as the palace of Queen Helena. And they are now discovering in the Gavati parking lot her palace, which was in the middle of Akra. The lanes also were burnt down, as were also the houses that were full of the dead bodies, such as were killed by famine. Last thing, the size of the temple courts. We're told in the Mishnah it's 500 cubits by 500 cubits. We have several different sizes for the cubits. We know in the temple we have what's called the royal cubit, which is 19.2 inches. We have the royal cubit is 19.2 cubits is the 5 handbreadths cubit. 20.67 inches is the royal cubit. And what was used in the inner courtyard, 23.04 inches, the 6 handbreadths cubit. A cubit cannot be more than 24 inches, but it can't be less than 14 inches. The width of the city of David, the top of the ridge to west, is 80 meters, or 260, going from east to west, is 262.46 feet. All right? Therefore, the northern and southern walls of the temple could only be this size, 262.46 feet at its maximum. That will calculate to a cubit equaling 6.2 inches. All right? I submit to you, the number of people that's required for the temple that's recorded by Josephus destroys the hypothesis. The location of David's palace destroys their hypothesis. The location of the Accra, the location of archaeological finds all over the city destroys the Accra. And the most condemning of all is their source, Josephus, has quotes that destroy their own argument. The temple cannot be located down in the city of David. Tomorrow I'm going to present how we know where the temple is located.